Hi everybody, it's crazy, it's Sunday, and it's time for the UPBGE video of the week. Now before I get started, gotta give a shout out to my trusted, because you guys rock. To my crazy fam, I love you guys. Now we're up to episode number 139, and last week we ended off with partial collision on page 16 of the game engine book. If you don't got it, link is in the description, so don't forget to get the files along with it. Okay, so we left off with the collisionProxy.blend, and we built a mesh around it and made it to where it was no collision at that point. Okay, the boundary is just gets everything, and you do snowballs at it and you could still hit up in this area, but it just hits it, so it was okay. Today we're going to do partial collision. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so another alternative to collision proxy is to simply turn off collision on part of the material, or the part of the model, excuse me. This can be done in the material properties editor by adding multiple materials. You can control which part of the model is collision detected and which part is ignored by collision detection. So let's go over here to collision multi-material. So we're going to go to File, Open, Collision Multi-Material. We're going to, oh, the tree is back. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go back like that, and let's hit P to start the game. Okay, and as you see, every bit of it can be hit. You know, you can throw something at it, and it's going to calculate physics for every little bit of it. Okay, even this little branch way over here. Okay, so start the game and notice that the entire tree object reacts to collision. You can confirm this by looking at the wireframe physics visualization, that green that was around it. Okay, in order to make the game run better, let's disable collisions for the smaller tree branches. Select the tree object and go to the material properties editor. So what we're going to do is going to select the tree object. We're going to come on over here and we're going to hit this little sphere looking thing right here, which not really a world, it's actually materials. Okay, and as you notice, there are two materials. Select the material slot named trunk. So that's this little guy right here, and make sure the physics checkbox is turned on. Okay, so you're going to look in here and you'll be like, well, where is it? I don't see no physics. It's actually in UPBGE is going to be under game settings. You're going to come down here and make sure this box is on. Okay, all right, so select the material slot named trunk, which I did, and make sure the physics box is checked. Select the material slot named branches next. So we're going to do branches and disable collision by unchecking the physics checkbox. The resulting file should be like in figure 811. If you're looking at the book, yeah, it's not going to be that. The game settings are different than the physics, because they took the physics settings out and dropped it right in the game settings. So we're not going to worry about that because it's right here in the game settings. So we did that. Okay, run the game again and notice that the smaller branches will now be ignored by the game engine, or the physics engine. So if we hit play, play, there we go, you'll notice that the smaller branches are not done by the tree. You know, it's not, doesn't have any physics on it, but the tree trunk and the thicker branches do. Okay, not only will this free up some physics computation, but it will also make the game more realistic by letting objects go through leaves. Okay, so if you had leaves, you know, so to speak, to those are leaves, things that you throw at it will go through those, but hit on the, like if you hit the trunk or the other branches. Okay. All right, texture baking. All right, the Blender render engine is capable of creating some stunning effects. Don't you wish you could have the level of graphic quality in your game? With texture baking, you can. Texture baking is the process of rendering effects such as shadow map, ambient occlusion, and light maps onto a texture, so they do not have to be computed in real time. Texture baking requires the material to be set up so that it can be rendered by the internal rendering engine. Then, with a few more clicks, the renderable material will be baked onto an image texture that can be used in-game. The entire workflow can be summarized as: make object material compatible for rendering, UV unwrap object, bake, reassign the baked texture to the object. So for the tutorial, let's try this out. Okay, so we're going to open up Texture Baking Blend. So let's go to Open, and we're looking for Texture Baking Blend. Okay, there we are. Run the game and notice that this interior scene is very flat and the lighting isn't very realistic. So let's go ahead and hit play. Yeah, it's not really realistic. It's like a light bulb is stuck underneath the cube, and the window doesn't really look like there's light coming in from it. Okay, so what are we going to do with that? So what we're going to do, we're going to quit out of the game and press F12 to render. Oh, hang on. Yeah, okay. To do a render of this scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit F12. Bloop, and if you look down here, as you see, now that's what the rendering should look like. It should cast a shadow, light there, and some shadowing. It should look a lot better. That would make look a lot better than compared to that, right? So close the render image by pressing F11. So we're not going to press F11 just to close this rendering image. I don't think it would work because it's different. You can actually just close out of the viewport. Okay, so nonetheless, all right, to bake the texture, you need to first unwrap the scene so that the baked texture has a place to go. To do this, right click on the to select the room object. So we've already got the room selected. As you see, that white line around it just shows you that it is selected. Okay, you might think it's the camera, but the camera is not. Okay, enter enter edit mode with a quick tap of the tab key. So we're going to hit tab. Now we're in edit mode. Okay, press U to invoke the UV unwrap menu. Select light map pack. So what we're going to do is going to hit U, light map pack, which is usually about the third one down right there. Okay, you're going to select that. Now you're going to be left with this box. Okay, you're going to see it says in the pop-up menu in the figure, well, it shows in figure 812, make sure that the new image checkbox is enabled. This will ensure that that an empty image texture is created for you. Click OK and unwrap your model. So we click OK, and now the model is unwrapped. Okay. Now we're going to go down to number 6 here. For a more complex model, it might be necessary to manually UV unwrap a model, but for this exercise, the automated unwrapping is sufficient. Keep in mind that for texture baking to work correctly, the UV layout should not have any overlapping region. Otherwise, the baking will render to the same texture coordinate multiple times, causing an artifact. To bake texture from the room object, go to the bottom of the render properties editor where the bake function is found, as follows in 8.13. Okay, so we're going to come down here to the bake. Okay. The bake mode selector controls what will be baked to the texture. Full render will bake the full color, light, shadow, and texture onto the texture. Ambient occlusion is another commonly used one. Select the full render for this project and click bake. Okay, so we got full render right here. Okay, and like they said, you can do all kinds, but we're going to do full render, and then we're going to select bake. This might take a few minutes depending on the complexity of the model. As the texture is getting rendered out, you can see that the baked texture filling up in the image editor on the bottom of the screen. And they're talking about right here. Okay, when the texture baking is finished, it will look something like in 8.14, which is exactly what this is right here. Okay. Now that the baking is finished, quit out of edit mode by toggling the tab key. So we're going to come back over here, we're going to hit tab, and now you're back to your regular scene. Okay. Finally, you need to tell the game engine to use the texture you just baked instead of the old materials. Okay, instead of these old materials. So we're going to come over here, and we want this one and not these. Okay, so the easiest way is to delete all 3 materials from the object by clicking on the negative button in the material properties editor. So what it's saying is click, click, goodbye. Now it doesn't have any, okay? This is a cheap and fast way to force Blender to use the texture you just created, okay? Run the game now. Notice that all the light and color you saw in the render are visible in real time. So let's go ahead and do that. We hit, make sure I'm on, yeah, okay. If you hit P, not really, it looks the same to me. So we may have to add it. Is it this one? Oh, definitely not that one. Okay, we have to save that image. Save image as light map. PNG. Hit save. I did it earlier. Okay, so now we have to just create a new one, I guess. That is that, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Which is odd, it's not putting it in there. Oh, hang on. Yeah, because I got to put a texture on it. That's what that's the problem I'm having. So, yeah. We can just do material and then go over here to this and then find our light texture, image or movie. We're going to hit open. We're going to do light map image. And now it should work. Okay, so now if we hit back to 0 and zoom in, we hit P, and now it looks nice. See, so yay! That's what it's supposed to look like with a new map pack on. So doesn't that look a lot better, you know, comparable to the old way? You know, I think so. All right, so notice that all of the light and color you saw in the render are visible in real time. However, specular effects such as specular highlights and reflections cannot be baked. Therefore, those are still not visible. A light map image is not automatically saved. To save the image, click on Image Save As from the image editor. You can also save the image by pressing F3 with the mouse over the image editor. I can't because it'll end my video, so we're not going to. Okay, so let me see if I can switch it over here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this figure 8.15 shows it without and with the new texture. As you can see, there's a big difference and it looks a lot smoother. It looks a lot more realistic. Okay, and as you see in this one, that's what it looks like. Limitations of texture baking. As with anything that sounds too good to be true, there is usually a catch. With texture baking, only view independent lighting effects can be baked. So while diffuse color can be baked to a texture because diffuse color is not linked to the camera view angle, specular highlights and reflections are ignored during texture baking because specular highlights are view-dependent lights. There is no way to bake them onto a static texture. Texture baking is an act of sacrificing flexibility for performance. Once a scene is baked, the scene becomes rather static. For example, moving an object after you baked the light map might result in a black spot and some odd-looking phantom shadow. So usually light baking is limited to the static environment only. Every object has to be UV mapped in a non-overlapping manner. If two areas of an object share the same texture coordinate, they will not display properly. Keep in mind that Blender doesn't save image files automatically, so make sure you manually save the baked texture file by clicking on Image Save. Despite the limitations, texture baking is a particular method that is widely used to include fancy light effect in real time. In addition to baking full renders, it is also possible to bake just an ambient occlusion map. The baked ambient occlusion texture can be used as a second texture to influence the surface shading of an object, which a lot of people do use ambient occlusion a lot. Okay, so that's where we're going to end. We're going to end it there. That's page 20, the bottom of page 22. We're going to leave off with, let me see, let me switch it over there. Okay, next week we're going to work on normal maps. Okay, so that's what we're going to work on next week. So we'll switch out and we'll play with that a little bit more. We did a lot of distance today, so hopefully that helps you out a little bit. If not, then let me know in the comments or come on over to the server and say, hey, I just don't get it. And I'll see if my friends and I can help you out. All right, so that's where we're at. Bottom of page 22. Next week, normal maps.